just like seeing her for the first time.
One day a giant crack appeared out of nowhere. A blue aura came out of it and quickly spread throughout the world. People called it mana. A minority especially sensitive to mana received an ability from its influence. Such people began to be called awakened. After that, the mana storm ended, but the crack in the sky remained, and after some time when people got used to the existence of the awakened mana storms passed throughout the world and portals appeared. The military fenced off one of these places from civilians, but at one point the portal light changed to red, which promised danger. The military turned around and saw how the portal cracked, and a huge ugly monster with 2 heads came out of the crack. After that, mana storms began to be called gates. As soon as the monsters appeared in this world, people were shocked, and the military opened fire, but were unable to cope with it. Civilians had to run away from the gate in panic, so as not to suffer the same fate, but among them were the awakened ones who did not run away when they saw the danger, and they began to fight the monsters. From that moment on, the world went through a cataclysm. Remembering the appearance of the Cataclysmic protagonist, Shin Junio ran through the ice cave with the thought that everything would change when he became awakened. He didn't want to work tirelessly anymore. It's not that he dreamed of being worried by everyone, he just didn't want to be beaten, robbed, but he didn't want to use violence either. Remembering the death of his comrades in that cave, he stopped and created a dagger in his hand, then threw it straight at the ice golem, but the weapon bounced off its hard body and pierced the ceiling. His breathing quickened in horror, and then the monster rushed to attack and struck, but he was able to block it and stand on his feet, but the ice under his feet cracked. He felt a shudder and panicked, and then the ice broke and he fell. He just wanted to have someone he could call a friend, but even that, he thinks, was too big a dream. Ended up falling into the icy water, a useless drink. He was ridiculed every time he introduced himself as a hunter. His body was sucked to the very bottom. He knew that one day he would die like this, but suddenly there was a bright flash. The monster, meanwhile, had already decided that he was dead, but suddenly he felt the fluctuation of energy below and turned around. Frozen in place from the depths, Junio began to rise, walking on daggers-like steps. He knew that one day he would die, but he still didn't want toast opening in front of the monster. He lowered his head, and his opponent raised his hands above his head, clenching into a fist. MC looked up at him, his eyes sparkling, meaning that he didn't want Tody so helpless. Immediately after that, dozens of sharp blades pierced the body of the ice golem and dug deeper, causing it to fall. The daggers evaporated, and now numerous cracks were visible in his body. The weapons moved behind Junio, and he thought that if he could become stronger than everyone, even though he was a support, then maybe his life would have been completely different. The system activated and reported that he opened the flow. He fulfilled all the conditions. Become a player. The system welcomed him. A few hours earlier, Mick ran through the forest with all his strength because he did not want to be late on such an important day. He ran to the meeting place where 2 Sank hunters of the Dawn Guild were waiting for him. A melee fighter, a girl named Kim Jimnoda, said that he was finally here, and her comrade with the defender class named Lim Dawon crossed his arms and exclaimed, "A newbie lit. He is the same as him in his days." The girl told him not to start, grumbling Woe was always late running up. To them, Junio stopped and caught his breath, apologizing to them for being late. He's a Dean creator, class support, who specializes in creating weapons. Danon told him with a smile not to be scared. Was just joking, he wasn't that late. Jim patted the newbie on the back with a smile and agreed, saying that they could go here, and then added that Hyun, Woo and Dee were already there. Junio awkwardly agreed with them and thought that things were bad. Months had passed since he joined the guild. This was his first dungeon and he was already late. There, it's the gate. And he looked up at it with confidence, mentally telling himself to get it together. This was the first dungeon he was going to as a support. He needed to prove his usefulness after. They went inside and joined up with Therist, of the team, the guildmaster of Dawn Mund, DA Bank Melee. Hunter came up to him. He spoke to him first and asked if this was his first raid. Right, he confirmed his words and said that this was his first time going as a support, but he had helped out in dungeons a couple of times. The guildmaster said that he needed to explain something to him. Then supports, unlike Fighters can't fight, so they need to pay attention to where he is. If he gets too close, there's a chance he'll get into a fight, and if he stands too far away, they won't be able to protect him. The point is to keep him at the optimal distance. Since he's a creator, he just needs to keep his distance and create daggers when he gives the signal. Easy, right? Junio, nervous lie, confirmed his words, and then asked doubtfully, is that really true? No other weapons are needed. He didn't let him finish, and confirmed his words, saying that he was the only one who needed an extra weapon. It's just a dungeon, and it's his first one too, so Heschelden overdo it suddenly. The Lin Wu, a sank hunter who specializes in range combat, activated his magic and told them to stop. He could sense mana. There was a monster here, the guildmaster told everyone. To prepare for battle, they needed to keep in formation. Dawon stepped forward, covering them, and they began to advance further into the cave. Dawon asked about the mana, and the mage replied that there were 3 small auras and 1 large one. The last one was large enough for the boss. Dawon thought it was strange. There was usually no boss here. He said that he would take on the boss and let them deal with the rest. After that he turned to Junio and asked how long it would take to create a dagger. If he hurried, he replied that it would take about seconds if he tried, but this dagger won't last even a minute. Guild leader pulled the mask off his face and smiled, asking him to start creating it. He'll be done with it in seconds. At that moment, a group of 4 monsters rushed to attack. These are crystal lizards, danger level D. This is a monster that grows on the mana stones of the dungeon. The appearance and abilities change depending on the absorbed mana stone. Dawon said with a smile that he was going to start, and Jim warmed up her fists and agreed. After that, her comrade concentrated and, releasing powerful energy from himself, stomped his foot on the ice and, raising the shield of his head, hit it with all his might, scattering all the monsters. After that, Jim rushed to attack and clenched her hand into a fist and then struck the monster on the head, stunning him. After which she jumped behind him, and he immediately fell to the ground unconscious. At this time, 2 monsters rushed at the rest of the group, and she, noticing this, thought that they were recovering faster than expected. She warned the others about the danger and exclaimed, "Is this magic hewn?" Wu stood behind him and began to conjure a saying that he was almost done. He shouted loudly, and then fireballs burst out of the magic circle, after which a huge explosion occurred, and the monsters were burned. He was glad that he succeeded, and Dawon said that this Iskrit now let him help. At this moment, Junio began to create weapons, and looked at them in surprise, thinking that this was a great attack order. Now he understood how the guild fights. D called up to him, and asked what happened to Tuth weapons. He replied that it was almost done, and told himself in his mind not to get distracted. He needed to focus us in an F-rank skill called creation. He created a small dagger, then grabbed it and threw it towards the guildmaster. Heck out it deftly, and used his ability to cover the blade in darkness. This is his AA skill called Shadow Weapon. S skill uses the user's weapon to transform it into a shadow weapon. Shadow weapons increase in quality and mana depending on the user's mana, and disappear after a while. Decharged, and approached the main monster, then lunged forward and cut off its head. The ice monster immediately died, and its corpse fell to the ground, and the weapon disappeared from the leader's hands. All the team members gathered together again, and Dawon asked if anyone was hurt. Jim replied that she was fine, and MC thought that they were cooler than he imagined. Each of them is great, but they're teamworkies. Beyond praise, they can become the best when they achieve more. He looked down at his hand, annoyed that compredo them. He could only create 1 dagger. He hadn't helped them in any way, and he had gotten distracted. Did he deserve Tobe? With them noticing his mood, the guildmaster approached him and said that he did a great job. He wasn't hurt, right? He was a little confused and excitedly replied that he was fine, thanks to them. After a second he added that he wasn't that useful. He laughed awkwardly, and Dean asked what he was talking about. Thanks to his skill, he saved so much money. Ash had seen his skill absorbs weapons. He couldn't afford it, even if he bought the cheapest one. That's why he needed a creator. It seems that you need a weapon with mana to activate the skill, but he still did a great job for the first dungeon. He smiled, and added that he will look forward to next time. Let him not abandon them. Hearing this, Junio smiled and thanked him, saying that he will try his best. Dawon was about to offer to collect the loot, but suddenly, everything in the cave shook, and they became very worried. Jim exclaimed, "Is it an earthquake?" you asked. Is the cave collapsing because they killed the boss? The MC pointed his finger forward, saying that there was a wall collapsing. The ice broke into pieces, revealing a passage to another place, and they decided to go there to check it out. Hyun Woo, who was walking ahead and lighting the way, said that it seemed to be a path that was connected to something. Dawon thought about it for a second, but suddenly Danon interrupted his thought, exclaiming, in anticipation, "A secret path? What else could it be, if not a path to secret treasures? They should go there quickly." Jim's eyes lit up with excitement, and she agreed with him, and who asked them to wait. "They can't just go in." Dawon asked, "Does he feel something?" He hesitantly answered that he doesn't, and the guild leader smiled, saying that he doesn't think everything will collapse here, so they will quickly go there. The rest of the team was glad that he allowed them to do this, and he honestly, since he was forced to agree with them. Dawon turned to Junio and told him to follow them, after which they all walked forward along the path, and soon came across an ice golem, which turned into a tragedy for them, hearing scream of the monster. Behind him, MC started to run and mentally exclaimed, "How did this happen? Everyone is dead except him. There shouldn't be such monsters in dungeons." He had never heard of a monster that magic couldn't track nice. He suddenly decided to turn around and, seeing the monster very close, realized that it was following him, after which the golem hit him, causing him to be thrown back, and he hit his back on the hard ice. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and he tried to get up on his striking hands, but the monster was already very close. MC thought that he couldn't die like this, and started to create a dagger, then grabbed it, and swung it with a loud crython. Threw it at the monster, but the blade bounced off the ice golem. Didn't pay attention to his attack, and had already managed to get closer to him, then dealt a powerful blow, because of which Junio fell through the ice and began to drown. As he fell to the bottom, he thought that now he understood what it was like. He had to rank support who can't even use basic effects like healing. He finally found a guild that needed him, but I tended with them abandoning him. It's so pitiful. He's sure someone else would have brought them more benefit. He closed his eyes, thinking that he didn't want to become awakened. This is his pipe dream. Suddenly the system told him that happened the flow. He met all the conditions to become a player after the message. His eyes suddenly opened, and then a bright light flashed in front of him, which illuminated his surprised and confused face, and the system greeted him. He looked in shock at the pop-up windows, one of which said that a new reward was available to him. He wanted to look at Eth, was so stunned by what happened that he simply fell into a stupor, and then air bubbles burst out of his mouth, and had mentally passed out, thinking that he did not know what was happening, but he did not care anymore. He reached out to the system window and pressed the agree button, clenching his teeth in despair, and then used his daggers to climb up and appear in front of the monster again. The system reported that he was receiving memories of his previous life. This moment, the protagonist's body was enveloped in an aura, and the monster attacked, and the system reported that this distribution of the reward was over. Juno's eyes widened as huge swords appeared around him, rushing towards the monster and piercing through its body, eventually causing it to fall. Junio suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head and gritted his teeth, wondering what was this. There were some strange memories in his head. Noticing something, he turned his gaze to the monster and saw that it had already approached him to deliver the next blow, after which a loud sound was heard. The monster's fist struck the ice shield that Junio had erected in front of himself. In time, he thought, "Ish not taking damage. It is a golem-like monster. It has incredible vitality." Heffled, weak, and immediately after that, his opponent broke through the shield, and he had to increase the distance, after which thought that if these memories were true, then even though it was a golem-like monster, its weak points and tactics would be the same. The so-called golem-like monster has no particular weak points. Even if it takes damage, it can recover. In this case, it is recommended to deal damage from different directions. At the same time, if possible, he needs to create a net with an equal range. Using the skill user as the center point, whoever gets caught in the net will move as the user sees. After creating the net, he summoned many swords, then clenched his hand into a fist. And these swords trembled, rushing at the monster at high speed, after which a loud crack was heard, and pieces of ice flew in all the directions. The golem fell apart and died, and MC walked up to Aiton's side with relief, thinking about how he thought this net world was just a support skill with which he could create atoms Faster it seems that the skill's efficiency increases, and it can also be used to attack independently. The system reported that the boss was defeated. Seeing the system window in front of him, he asked if he could view the monster or dungeon information. He received no answer and noticed a purple aura rising from the monster's body, turning into Asphere and falling on his hand. The system reported that the passive magic absorption skill was activated, and Heliking, added in surprise, exclaimed, "What is this?" After that, he decided to sort out all the events that happened to him. He received memories from his previous life. He does not know what exactly the previous life means, but this is definitely him. To be more precise, a different him, in a couple of years, in this future. The entire world has fallen, things too terrible to mention happened, and he inherited the memories of them. But even if this is the future, it may not be the future of the world he is in now. There are too many things that do not add up. Even the status screen in front of him. This did not happen in his life. A system window appeared in front of him with a list of skills: creation, communication, rent payment, and online. World MC realized that he really became a player. This is a term used for the chosen ones who have awakened based on his memories. Players do not exist yet. At the moment, about 2 years later, a small number of awakened were chosen to become players. A blue screen appeared that only chosen ones could see in the future. This mysterious thing was called the system, which sounded more like a joke. It was enough to shock the awakened. Not only were the players given a system, they all received different rewards. For example, strength and skills, different from what they had before. Systems and rewards appeared out of nowhere. They were used by the players and caused them to grow rapidly, compared to other awakened, thanks to the guildmaster, who also happened to be the chosen one. The Dawn Guild he was a member of was able to become a first-class guild. He had no direct involvement in this, but it motivated him to grow. In order to boldly remain a developing guild, he constantly made efforts to develop his skills in the system window. You can see the skills you have learned, and the experience when first heard about the system. He thought it was convenient. In the end, it really turned out that way. If his skills and experience were carried over from his previous life, then the skill used on the golem's corpse was one that he didn't have in his previous life. He clicked on his skill to learn more about it. The passive skill magic absorption collects energy from the contaminated mana within the dungeon. If the amount of magic collected exceeds the limit, a reward will be given. He thought that he hadn't heard of players having something like this. Is the reward only given to him? He looked at the magic gauge. That was just starting to fill up, and thought that it was collecting energy from the contaminated mana. He had some ideas on how to get magic, deciding to think about it later. He walked over to the corpses of his comrades and nervously swallowed. First, he needed to deal with their bodies. Sometime later, at the Hunter Association headquarters, the girl approached her colleague, who was looking out the window, and asked if he could go home. He didn't understand what she meant, and she explained that it was strange. A small guild was clearing an unidentified dungeon and got into an accident. 4 out of 5 died, but the only survivor was a drank support. It wouldn't have been unusual if he had run away with the others were fighting, but that wasn't the case. He even took care of their bodies and delivered them to the association. The gate had already disappeared, so there was no more evidence to be found. What does he think? Felt like something was wrong. He didn't let her finish, and asked if she thought a D-rank support would have been able to kill those hunters. He hit her on the head with the file and told her to come to her senses. It wasn't a civil matter. She knew that herself. Even if something strange happened there was no way to find out what happened in the dungeon. They can only collect evidence as it comes to them. She rubbed the area where she was hit and agreed with a confused expression, but she still wanted to object, but he stopped her from doing so and asked if she had any suggestions. This happened quite often in their time. He stepped aside and waved the folder, saying that no hunters don't report the gates they find and go missing there. If they report to the association, they will hold an auction for entry. They all know that they will only get a small reward, so they risk their lives and go there secretly. After all, it's almost impossible for a small guild to win at an auction. Let her call him for additional investigation or something. She bowed slightly and bid him farewell, and at that time he went out into Thekarider and looked at the folder, thinking as his name, Shinjunu. He had already said this, but this didn't seem like a normal case. The situation was clear, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. First off, all he acted too calmly during the interrogation he witnessed. The incident, with almost no experience in dungeon soir, would be logical for him to panic. Something was missing, but he explained everything clearly. Of course, it's possible that he's just that kind of person. He's met people like that before, but there's definitely something wrong here, but he doesn't know what it is, and it's upsetting him. He took a deep breath, deciding that he doesn't need to worry about it. He needs to check everything out. Junel was walking down the street at this time, looking at his phone, thinking that something was wrong. Was that an unidentified gate? He doesn't remember this dungeon in his past life, and all the guild members saw the gate application form. There was definitely an association stamp on it, but if the gate was registered as unidentified, could someone pretend to be the association to deceive the Dawon guild, or is the association itself involved in this? But what worries him the most is that this might not just happen to their guild. As the investigator said, people going missing in unidentified gates has already become a problem. He doesn't know the whole story, but the news in all the guilds is about people going missing in unidentified gates again for the third time this year. They all have players like the guild leader Mund, Don, and even young talents who will become heroes in the future. He suddenly stopped and his legs trembled at the thought of Sumian wanting to wipe these heroes off the face of the earth. That means he has to hide his abilities carefully from now. One is the only survivor of an unsolved case. If he acts suspiciously, he will be targeted. He stretched out his hand and opened the system window, thinking that he has about years until the first player selection to prepare, but in the meantime, he needs to activate all his development skills. He needs to find a way to quickly develop without attracting attention. He looked through the system windows in search of a useful skill, and then his wandering gaze stopped, and he reached out with a smile.